Hi, it's Juliet. I'm back at my mom's for 3 days of sewing again, but one of the days I will be working remote. Still, I hope to sew a bit before work, during lunch break and after work. My project for those 3 days is a puffer jacket. It's going to be my first time sewing any kind of coat. I had one red puffy fabric and one warm beige lining. The lining is super thick and very comfortable to touch. Hopefully, using those, I'll be able to make myself a warm puffer jacket for this winter. During the whole week prior, I looked for any pattern for a jacket that I would like. It was very difficult to find any, and I ended up finding one that seemed okay, so I bought it. It was only $3. On Tuesday night when I arrived, I assembled it, which took about an hour. And actually, I hadn't really read it before, but it's an expert pattern, so it does not explain how to do anything precisely. The pattern that I had sewed with before explained everything in great details, but this one just says add the sleeves, add the hood, and that's it. So I was pretty much screwed because I had never sewed a coat before and I have never done a lining. I have never done a hood, nor a pocket. Basically, I'm very much a beginner and I should not use an expert pattern. But I decided to not overthink it and just cut the pieces in the evening. It was cool to take advantage of my motivation about sewing that I had built up during the whole week, so I could cut the main fabric and the lining. The next day was Friday, so a work day. I woke up 2 hours earlier to be able to sew, still beaming with enthusiasm, and I realized that the overlock was in white and I needed it in red. But this is my mom's overlock and she needed it in white for her project, so the puffer jacket got moved to the next day and I decided to make t-shirts. This one is like a sewing pattern that I bought. The second one is a sewing pattern that I made, and you can see that it's not really laying flat, but it's because it's a design. It's because I'm gonna adjust it when it's on me, but it's a different color. And the third one is also one that I made, so you know I can also make flat t-shirt. It's just the second one is a design. For those 3 t-shirts, I used a fabric that was not stretchy, and my patterns are made for stretchy fabric. But I did sort of adjusting the pieces when I cut them. What I didn't anticipate though, is that this fabric is very scratchy. It doesn't feel like it when you touch it, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't have bought it, but when you wear it, it's very obvious. I realized that, yeah, I'm never gonna wear any. I could line them, but since they're not really perfect, that would require a ton of work for something that isn't really worth it. It still was useful. Since the goal was mainly to just verify the patterns, it worked for what it needed to be, and I did adjust all of the patterns, so none of them are confirmed. Confirmed would be you just use it and it works. So I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping that at some point I will have 3 t-shirts that are completely fine, and then I can just binge sew a ton of t-shirts. For now I've sewn like, I don't know, 15 t-shirts or something, and I pretty much can wear none of them, which is very sad. I've sewed so many stuff, but I'm learning. I am learning, that's important. I sewed those 3 t-shirts at lunch break in white because the overlock was white. The first t-shirt was honestly okay. I mean, it's the easiest one, but good to know that this pattern is coming along. The second is less okay. There were too much fabric on the shoulders, so I fixed it, but then there were still weird folds on it. So clearly I didn't fix it correctly. And then the third one is the pattern that I bought, and it had 2 folds towards the squares, which are not supposed to be there, but mainly the sleeves were really tight. So I did not adjust this one correctly. They were so tight that I could not keep them like that, so I cut them, which I do like. I think the design looks pretty with the half sleeves, but still I'm not gonna wear any. And in the evening, after adjusting all of the patterns, I started to sew a sport t-shirt. It was probably overcompensation for the first fabric that was very scratchy, because this one was the most comfortable fabric I've ever touched. And also, I do need a sport t-shirt. This is what it looks like. It's so nice to wear. I made it a bit larger around the lungs so I can breathe when I'm running, which is really useful out of your clothes, while still keeping the t-shirt looking fitted. It is not holding my lungs down. That was really nice that I could improvise that on the spot. The problem is that I finished it with the overlock and it skipped some stitches and the overall look wasn't really pretty. I continued sewing though. I don't know how I was so motivated during those 3 days. But I made another t-shirt from the pattern that I bought. This one with long sleeves, so it's not gonna be a sport t-shirt, but I used the same fabric because it was so comfortable. On this one, I put a bias on it to finish it and I messed up everything. But from afar, you can't really tell, and I'll definitely be wearing this one. On Saturday morning, I made a whole other t-shirt from my handmade pattern, very similar to the previous one. I wanted to try to put the bias correctly this time, but I didn't succeed to do that. From afar, the t-shirt looks good, but from up close, there's so much problems. This is probably the worst one. The bias does not align correctly on the angle. This shouldn't have a hole. There's red randomly because in the middle of it, my mom was done with her project, so she changed the overlock to red. You can see the thread on the shoulder, which should be grey, but it's not. And there's a random spike on top of it. So definitely the worst one, but it's so comfortable that I know I'm still gonna wear it. Then I stopped procrastinating and I started on the puffer jacket. I oversewed every pieces that I had cut, and since I didn't have instruction, I invented the way to make it, which for the main assembly was not that bad, because I had done t-shirts before, and it's pretty similar, make a torso, make sleeves. I could figure this one out. But for the lining, I had never done anything close to a lining before, and I did it so wrong. The coat was turning out so poorly, and it was very disappointing. First, the fabric and the lining had cost some money, and on top of that, I had hoped to make myself a nice, pretty and warm puffer jacket to wear, and that just wasn't happening. So I was like, first, I'm never gonna wear that. Second of all, I'm losing time. And third of all, I cannot sew. You know, realizing that I'm not an expert, which I knew that, but I was like, I can figure it out, and turned out, no, I cannot. It was honestly a hard sewing day, and then at that point the overlock broke, so my mom and I decided to go shopping and breathe some fresh air. When we came back, I felt a bit better, my mom nicely fixed the overlock, and I could finish the puffer jacket. This is what it looks like inside. Clearly the lining was done very wrong. We are not supposed to see all of the seams and everything. And after a good meal and a good break, I had the idea of lining it again. So I stole a lining from my mom, thank you, and I started over, ready to hide all of these ugly seams and figure out how to make a lining. In the evening, I sewed the whole lining. I messed up the sleeves because I forgot them, but the whole lining was sewed. Sunday morning, my motivation was still going strong, no idea why, but I had thought about fixing the sleeves, fixing that the coat wasn't really falling properly, and even that the front wasn't correct. So I started with the sleeves, I assembled them incorrectly, but I think no one will know because it's very rare that someone goes up your sleeve and look at how they're made, so I think it's fine. I did try my best at least. I did a top stitch on every single border, I did the sleeves, I did 3 top stitch for the hood, I did the wrist, and then I was done. The coat was the best it was gonna be. The hem on the wrist might just be the best part of that puffer jacket. Honestly, I was really happy. I do think that the lining made it. Without it, it was so ugly, and with it now, well, I was really happy with it. For my first coat ever, my first lining, my first hood, my first puffy jacket, now it's triple because there's the warm lining and the pretty lining on top of that. I really like this lining. I think it's very pretty and it fits the red quite well. There's things I don't like about the pattern. I would modify it to make it longer, then the sleeves are okay at the bottom, but at the top I would like them to be way higher. The hood, I had already made 2 darts to adjust it because it was originally way too big, and the 2 darts were huge, so I would just make another hood from scratch because this one is just not gonna cut it. Also, the back was too large in my opinion. I thought about buying another pattern, but I spent so long finding this one already, and it was close to what I wanted, so I decided I had more chance of getting what I wanted if I modified this pattern, which is what I did. And then I decided to make a muslin, which is sewing something in a fabric that you don't like just to test out the fit of a pattern. I used the fabric that I had chose for the lining because I didn't like it anymore. For each pieces, I would try to sew it, and if it wasn't working correctly, for example, those 3 don't align, I would fix the pattern and fix the sewing. And when I was done with it, I actually liked the muslin. I don't know why I was hating on the fabric so much because this fabric is actually pretty cool. So I decided to keep it. But still, I wasn't completely satisfied with the fit of the pattern. For example, the back was still not okay to me, so I did another pass on the whole pattern to modify it, and I unsewed and sewed back up the beige muslin. While I was doing that, I added pockets, cause might as well train on them. but I had never made pocket and I made it very wrong, which is fine, it's a training. But still, the muslin was done. We were almost at the end of the weekend at that point. I still had 2 hours left, so I decided to put a bias on the sport t-shirt that I had made the day prior, because I didn't like the edges with the overlock. And when we had gone shopping with my mom the day prior, I had bought a bias that was stretchy, because on the 2 other t-shirts I used a bias that wasn't stretchy, and that's just a mistake because the fabric is super stretchy. So I kind of also wanted to use my new toy and see what, if it's gonna work better with the bias that is stretchy. It was very difficult, but I'm super pleased that I took the time to do that because the t-shirt looks 10 times better with this. And that's it for the weekend. I sewed so many stuff. I don't think I was ever that productive in sewing before. In total, I sewed 3 scratchy t-shirts, 3 very comfortable t-shirts, then a whole coat and 1 muslin. The rain announced the end of this impressive weekend, so it was time for me to pack and go home. But good news, I'm coming back next week, yes again, to sew again, so we'll see what I can do then. Bye!